While much of the civilized world longs for peace in the Middle East, there are some who do not. Hamas clearly belongs in that category, but there are others who seem intent on exacting a high price for peace, one far greater than Israel's leaders are willing to pay. Among the key players emerging in the latest Gaza peace effort are the state of Qatar and the Republic of Turkey, two nations whose involvement has raised serious concerns. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Dr. Jonathan Schanzer. He is Executive Director at the Foundation of Defense for Defense of Democracies. He's the author of Gaza Conflict 2021, Hamas, Israel, and 11 Days of War. Dr. Schanzer, welcome to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
All right, let's start with these high-level officials from the U.S. That are in Israel, including Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been there. Vance, who arrived in Israel yesterday, was asked about this. He said it's not about monitoring it in the sense of monitoring a toddler. It's important for the administration to make sure our people continue to keep doing what we need them to do. Is this plan holding? Is it going to work?
It's a good question, and I don't know if we know how to answer it just yet. Right now, I would say it is holding, but it is tenuous. We got the 20 live hostages back. That was a huge achievement for Donald Trump. I don't think anybody thought that it would happen. We've got roughly half of the slain hostages back. That's a huge achievement. But the question really, I think, is whether Hamas is going to continue to relinquish them, because they amount to Hamas's leverage in this war with Israel. The fewer hostages, the slain hostages, the bodies that they have, the less leverage that they have against Israel. Then comes the last part, which I think is the most tenuous, the most complicated, which is, can we get Hamas to simply lay down its arms, dismantle itself, and go quietly into the night? There, I think it is probably unrealistic to expect them to do this willingly. Then comes the question after that. What kind of leverage do we have over Hamas to force them to do this short of another round of war? I think that's what everyone seems to be asking themselves right now. For now, Donald Trump appears to be still rather sanguine about this, as is J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. But I think the specifics about what comes next are still somewhat scant.
All right, well, let's talk about the role of Qatar and Turkey. I mean, I don't see them as nonpartisan players here to ensure peace in Gaza. And if I were Prime Minister Netanyahu, as he has expressed, I agree with him. I wouldn't want them near me, let alone in my country, on my border.
Yeah, look, the Prime Minister is 100% right, and all of those expressing doubt about these two countries are fully justified. The reason being is that Qatar has been a sponsor of Hamas since roughly 2012, billions of dollars handed over to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But I got to say, it's not even that. These are supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide. They are sponsors of the Taliban. They've been providing safe haven to Al-Qaeda and to the Islamic State. This is a full-on radical patron, terrorist patron in the Middle East. And they also masquerade as allies of the United States. The Turks, involved in a similar game. They have been sponsoring Hamas since roughly 2011. On top of that, they've been helping the Islamic State, allowing fighters to cross their border, selling the oil derived from the Islamic State before it collapsed. They're major Muslim Brotherhood supporters. They've been involved with some of the Al-Qaeda affiliate groups that have been ravaging the Middle East. These two countries are wolves in sheep's clothing, and right now, they have a seat at the table in Gaza. I don't think that anything good comes of these two countries if they are allowed to play a role in post-Hamas Gaza politics or the reconstruction of society there. I think asking them to get involved likely means the return of Hamas, maybe just under a different name. Maybe nothing changes at all, and they just try to buy for time.
Well, we know what Erdogan's ultimate goal is, to reestablish the Ottoman Empire. And Israel is in the way. I mean, he's made that very clear. In fact, he vetoed the presence of Prime Minister Netanyahu in Egypt at the Gaza Peace Summit.
Yeah, and look, Erdogan is an extremely dangerous man. He's been eviscerating Turkish democracy. He actually helped Iran evade sanctions at the height of that effort to thwart the Islamic Republic's nuclear program, and pocketed huge amounts of money, and so did his family members as well. He is an Islamist to his core. He's an anti-Semite. He's anti-American. And again, this guy has no business having a seat at this table. But what's interesting right now, and this is the big gamble that Donald Trump is trying to pull off right now. It'll be fascinating to see if he can do it. High risk, high reward. He thinks he can co-opt Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He thinks that he can co-opt the strongman of Turkey. They have a good relationship. Erdogan seems to respect Donald Trump. Donald Trump seems to like him. I don't think he has any illusions about what the Turks have been up to under Erdogan's rule. The question is whether he can bring Erdogan to heel. And on that, I'm just not sure that this man is going to be willing to play ball. We may yet find a way to chicken wing and to strong arm Erdogan. But if we don't, the price will be Gaza, and it could be the return of Hamas.
Jonathan, could it be the old adage, keep your friends close and your enemies closer?
Look, I think that is the mentality, and I think that bringing the Qataris into the tent also, it's the same mentality. But I think there are some prices to pay here. Number one, Israel could pay a heavy price by allowing the Qataris and the Turks to set up a new radical network right on Israel's border. We saw how that worked before. It didn't end well. I don't want to see this play out again, and I don't think the rest of the Middle East does either. The other thing that we're seeing is that some of America's traditional allies, Israel's allies, and maybe even future allies, and here I'm talking about the Emiratis and the Saudis, they're wondering, why is it that the United States has just offered Qatar and Turkey to play a role in the future of the Middle East and the future of the Gaza Strip after engaging in bad behavior, when they were the ones that were playing by the rules, working with the United States, being good allies, and now they're on the outside looking in. So our alliance structure right now is a little bit skewed. It's a little tilted, and I think we're going to have a little bit of work to do. This is not stuff that's all insurmountable.
Well, that could also prompt bad behavior on others if bad behavior gets you a seat at the table. I mean, just today, a story coming out of JNS News is that Al Jazeera worked hand in glove with Hamas. Documents that were obtained by the Israeli Defense Forces show that there was a hotline from Al Jazeera, which is a media outsource basically funded by the Qatar government, to the Hamas terrorists. I mean, they were telling them what to say in their newscast.
Yeah, and look, we've seen this for a long, long time now. Al Jazeera employs Hamas terrorists. Full stop. We've seen multiple indications of this throughout not just the last 2 years of war, but really over the last 20 years. And lest anybody think that this is just about Hamas or just about Gaza, Al Jazeera used to know exactly where the attacks against American soldiers were going to take place in locations in Iraq and Afghanistan. They somehow knew exactly where Al-Qaeda or the Taliban were about to attack American soldiers, and they got it all on video. And they had people standing by to provide a dialogue or a discussion afterwards. It's truly sick stuff what the Qataris have pulled off over the years. It's remarkable to me that the United States has allowed this country to be elevated to the status of a major non-NATO ally. We need to revise the contract with this country, but certainly we should not be giving them a seat at the table if our goal is stabilization of the Middle East. These guys have done nothing but destabilize the Middle East for as long as I can remember.
I would agree with you, Jonathan. I want to play a clip from CBS's 60 Minutes where Jared Kushner was on this past weekend. Play clip number 3, please.
The biggest message that we've tried to convey to the Israeli leadership now is that now that the war is over, if you want to integrate Israel with the broader Middle East, you have to find a way to help the Palestinian people thrive and do better.
How are you doing with that message?
We're just getting started.
Is that the message?
Look, that's the message coming out of Kushner and Witkoff and perhaps J.D. Vance, perhaps the president. I think there's a lot of concern right now about trying to enlist the help of the Palestinian Authority. The guy who runs the Palestinian Authority is irredeemably corrupt. This is a man who's been at the helm of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, since 2005. I mean, and this guy has pocketed American assistance. He has been funding the salaries of terrorists. He's been paying for the families of terrorists who've been killed in action, blowing themselves up to kill Israelis. This guy has zero legitimacy. So I think that if the Trump administration wants to try to bring the Palestinian Authority into the tent, they're going to need to think about revising the leadership structure of the Palestinian Authority first and foremost, establishing somebody at the helm who is interested in peace, who's interested in coexistence. Right now, I don't think that we see that. The only other thing that I would mention here is that it actually appears that Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner sat down with Khalil al-Hayya, one of the top leaders still living from the Hamas organization. They met him in Qatar. This is a flagrant violation of American norms and policies. Our policy, dating back to the presidency of Richard Nixon, is not to negotiate with terrorists. We have done that here in order to get a deal done. And I think many Israelis are thankful, many Americans are thankful. But I think we need to be really careful, and I think that's kind of the theme, the message coming through here right now. This is, it's dangerous stuff that we're doing. We are beginning to maybe revise some of our own rules in pursuit of a deal, and I question whether that's a good idea.
We just have about 2 minutes left, Jonathan, but speaking of this, we're looking at Gaza, but should we also be looking at Judea and Samaria under the Palestinian Authority, where we saw the 2,000 terrorists and others that were released into Judea and Samaria? I mean, is that a cauldron that is liable to erupt again like we saw in the first Intifada?
It is, and it has been for quite some time. It's always been on the precipice, and it's a serious concern. The Israelis have found rockets in the West Bank in recent weeks and months. That's something that we hadn't seen before. The Iranians are bringing in weapons and cash and fighters by way of Jordan, which is Israel's most porous and longest border. And the Jordanians are not doing enough to stop it. The Israelis have talked about annexing parts of Judea and Samaria, and they're finding a lot of pushback right now, not just from the Arab world, not just from the Europeans, but also from the Trump administration. I think that, I think Israel needs to move deliberately here. I'm not suggesting that they do anything rash, but I would say that there is a lot of concern right now about stability, about potential outbreaks and violence. And it's, of course, raising the question of whether Israel should control this territory or whether somebody else should. I know the Israelis know, from their perspective anyway, that if they controlled this territory, they would have far fewer concerns about terrorism, about smuggling, and all the other challenges that have been reported in recent weeks and months.
Well, Jonathan, we had an American politician one time said, "Drill, baby, drill." I think we should annex, baby, annex. I think Israel needs to take as much as they can right now as they can for their own security and safety. Of course, they can't bite off more than they can chew because they've got to keep control of it. But I think peace it's an aspiration, but it's going to take a lot of perspiration to get there. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
My pleasure, as always.